Everybody's frowning at me. Nobody with stones out there, are there? Well, let's turn to our first slide here. Take a second probably to get there.
No,
You're there.
we're waiting on you.
It's great. Yeah, it's
Where is that?
That's a pretty space picture. Like a blue ocean.
We can look at that
Why
all
is the-
day. We don't have that.
Why is the ocean in the sky?
Because you're upside down.
It's upside down.
The wave doesn't get to shore yet.
Now I remember Larry.
So,
A lot of important
Jeopardy
stuff last
music.
week.
Yeah.
You missed it, sorry.
Press the go button again. I think so. Back.
You really think it's best to?
Hmm?
It's funny that Beer
Find out where that
fellow
is?
was talking about how we've never really been a Christian nation. That the founding fathers were.
No.
Majority
You?
of them were deists,
Oh,
but
I thought you knew.
not necessarily
Oh,
Christians. They acknowledged a higher power.
Are we doing something? Do I need to push this
They
here?
weren't
I think you're all the way over
necessarily
to the right-hand
Christians.
side. You're at the monitor.
Obviously, things have evolved to where they have.
It's a matter of hitting the right
Now
button. Okay. All right, so religious freedom. What does religious freedom mean to you? Have you ever thought that question? What does it mean to be free, really to have religious freedom? And the next question in the bulletin, or in the book that they ask is, what would you be willing to do to preserve or to win religious freedom in this country?
Lose my neck.
You would be willing to lose your neck.
Yes.
Well, a lot of people have, haven't they, for religious freedom? The people, the pilgrims, and those that came over to the United States and founded, forged the nation, and the ones who separated from England.
And not only in this country, in other countries that wanted to not, say the Islamic-based countries, the Christians
Yeah,
lose
yeah, to this very day.
to this, today, yeah, every day,
Countries like North Korea as well.
yes.
It's illegal, it's illegal in many places, even democratic countries, to proclaim the gospel. One of our great allies, Israel, it's illegal to go out and proselytize there.
Last week, when I said I had trouble with the fella keep coming out and saying, we are not a Christian country, we are not a Christian. I wanted to scream, we're a republic, and it's for the people, by the people.
Right.
And we are a majority in this country. And so that's why where I was going until further along, you said we are born into a religion in this country. Then I understood where you're coming from. But I was ready to fight the guy.
Yeah, it gets a little tense and a little touchy when they make statements like that, because we've always, everywhere you look, at least when I've been growing up, everywhere you look, there are Christian churches. We have In God We Trust. There seems to be a very strong Christian influence, at least in our past, that maybe is waning in these days. But yeah, there is a strong, and I think that this third section really helps us to realize that that's what the church has done for us. I mean, it has been it's been active in the past, and the Christian church has been the active principle that has guided our nation towards the freedom that we have.
And the justices still have the Ten Commandments up on the wall.
Yes.
And
They
a
ought to
lot of
remember that.
courthouses, still, when I left Ohio, there was still the Ten Commandments out front of the courthouse. So,
But do they see them?
well, that is their problem.
Yeah.
I
They
see
see
them.
them.
Well, that's something too. You see it every single day, and you turn a blind eye. It doesn't matter anymore. It's always there. You don't see it.
Yeah, you can get used to things and not notice that they're there.
You know, that
Yeah.
That idea of religious freedom is pretty, I used to think I understood it real well until recently, and I had some discussions with my oldest boy about this, because being a Korean linguist, being now having a degree in foreign relations, and being a very strong person in this knowledge that he has, such as knowledge of Islam and knowledge of a few other things. We discussed the person who did all the shooting over in Fort Hood. He says, we can't fight. The idea of fighting a verb, terrorism. He says, you can fight things, but you can't fight that terrorism word. And so, and I'm getting around to religious freedom here for a second, because the way he looks at it, and I've come around to thinking this way a little bit myself, is that when you have a radical who's doing something such as walking into a theater and shooting a bunch of people up, or a UPS place, or an army base, that person is outside the normal laws. It doesn't matter whether he's an Israelite, or whether he's an Islamist, a Buddhist, or a Christian. You know, we got Timothy McVeigh, he kind of quoted that he was a Christian. So I mean, it doesn't matter what the news media says about him, in fact, his religion, and he's not a terrorist. He's just an out-and-out murderer. So, the idea of religious freedom, I said, well, but those, he says, who's they and who's those? You have to look at it as they're people. And when they get outside the norm, that's a problem. Because they're outside the law, and they're outside even of their religious beliefs, being an extremist.
So, I'm not following how that has to do with religious freedom.
Well, we say, well, we come here to practice our religion as we see fit, and then it gets skewed to the left or to the right. We say, well, those Islamists want to have Sharia law. You can't have Sharia law here, because you already have the law of the land.
So, but still, religious freedom gives them the right to worship how they want to worship.
That's correct. That's absolutely correct. Thanks for helping me clarify.
Oh, okay. So they can,
But if you shoot somebody, you shall not murder.
well, right.
And then you're outside.
Well, we've got laws here, and
Yeah.
our laws are we're going to get into that a little bit.
Oh,
What if Congress made a law making it a hate crime against preaching, or to preach against homosexuality?
That's not free.
In what way would this inhibit the commission of the church?
You're denying sections of the Bible, and the Bible is the infallible Word of God.
No, what is the commission of the church? Preach the gospel, but I mean, of course, as good Lutherans, we know that the gospel is meaningless unless the law does its work. And everyone has to recognize their sinfulness, that they are sinners, and in the recognition of sinfulness, in the recognition that we and of our own selves are incapable of receiving heaven or earning heaven, and relying then upon Christ's satisfaction, we have forgiveness. But it's impossible to be forgiven for something we don't know we're in need of being forgiven for. You know, and if we have a sin, we ask for forgiveness. We want to be forgiven, and we're forgiven.
Hey, Pastor Gary, the Ten Commandments, like you said, is like a mirror.
Yes.
Thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not covet,
Right.
etc. Well, those are all sins, but homosexuality is just one of many sins. Fornication is a sin.
Sure.
Bestiality is a sin. I mean, hopefully we won't go that far in our culture. I don't know. I'm kind of worried.
polygamy, I mean, all of the sexual sins you can think of from A to Z, okay?
Sure.
Lying, idolatry. All of that just shows us our sinfulness because in Adam we're fallen.
Right.
And because of that, we're slaves to sin. And the only way we can be set free is through Jesus Christ and His blood shed on the cross for us. And that's where you were saying the forgiveness of our sins is through Jesus Christ. But if they prohibited us from preaching against sin, I don't care. What if they passed the law tomorrow and say, you can't preach against adultery anymore? I mean, are we going to go, okay, well, we'll just go along with that. And you can't preach against stealing anymore. Or idolatry. You can't preach on the Ten Commandments anymore. What are we going to do?
Of course, they probably wouldn't pass a law, but culturally what they might do is call you a hater.
Well, yeah, that's one of their tactics. But it's hateful for me not to speak the truth in love.
Isn't it?
If I'm sick and I go to a doctor and I have cancer, I don't want the doctor to lie to me and go, oh, there's nothing wrong with you, go home.
Yeah, you'd be fine.
That's not love, that's hate. You're going to let me die. A real doctor will say, no, you have stage 4 cancer. We need to do immediate treatment or you're going to die because I love you. I love you with love. I'm a sinner just like the homosexual. We should not hate homosexuals. We should love them because Christ died for them. Because I'm just as much of a sinner as they are. And I'm just a sinner saved by God's grace. I am a beggar that has been forgiven because I know how sinful I am. And I don't want them to spend eternity in hell. So I love them. I show them the love of Christ. I speak the truth in love and respect and gentleness and say, Christ can forgive you no matter what your sin is. I don't care if you're into pornography. I don't care if you're an adult movie star and you do adult movies. I don't care what the sin is. I don't care if you're into drugs, alcohol. It does not matter. Christ died for everyone. He, when they were ready to stone the woman caught in the act of adultery, I like what Jesus said. He who is without sin cast the first stone. And all of them had to walk away. And Jesus said, has anyone condemned you, woman? She says, no, neither do I condemn you. Go and here's the important part, sin no more. So we have that chance to be forgiven. We repent daily. And that's what I like about Jesus. He's like the passage, Romans 8. What shall separate us from the unconditional love of Christ? Nothing. No sin. No evil. And that's what I like about Jesus. He is so forgiving. I mean, He even forgave the people who crucified Him.
That's what's so magnificent about the gospel.
The person.
Yes.
We hate
The sin.
the sin.
Oh, I agree with that.
And
I
it's
agree
like
with that.
Christ,
Anyway,
there was a
that's all I
saying
had to
I
say.
read somewhere
Sorry,
where
preaching.
some of the angels
Yeah,
were
I was-
rejoicing
sorry.
whenever the Red Sea covered all of the Egyptians. And He chastised them, saying, why are you rejoicing? They were my creation.
Sure.
But He
Don't rejoice
punished
when
them.
right.
And don't rejoice
The balance.
because they have fallen.
Which we know in
Reminded me of Jonah.
Yes.
Jonah's upset because God won't destroy Nineveh
because they repented.
because they repented. He knew that if he went there and claimed to repent, that they would repent. He didn't want them to repent. He wanted God to slay them, to smite them. Oh, smite them, mighty smiter. And He didn't smite them. And he went and sat down and brooded. And God said, shouldn't I be more concerned about these people and all their cattle? I don't know what the cattle had to do with it, but all these people and that are, like sheep without a shepherd, and you're more upset about your vine that withered. He said, you really have a right to be? Oh, yes, I'm angry unto death. What a silly prophet he was.
I think it's a sin not to speak out about homosexuality.
Right.
We have so many homosexuals in my family. And I told them that I would always love them. I would, it wasn't my law, it was God's law, and they were all baptized. And I said, this is a sin. But it's fear. Fear in Christians. I'm going to lose their love. I'm going to lose their coming to see me. And I lost it all.
Fear man.
But I'm not going to fear. I'm not going to fear for telling them the truth. This is the truth. And I want you in heaven with me.
the importance of the church teaching both law and gospel, and teaching law so that you can get to the gospel. I mean, the purpose of the law isn't because you want to be a jerk. You know, the law isn't an evil thing. It shows us the heart of God, shows us the nature of God. The law is perfect, and it shows us the heart of God. However, what's the problem with sin? Sin isn't a thing all by itself. You know, it's not a creation. There's not a thing called sin that God created somewhere.
It's perversion.
It's taking something good that God created and using it for a purpose that God didn't intend it. And why is that a problem? Because those things have a way of dragging us away from our beloved. They drag us away from our Savior and God.
Well, a question that repeats itself in my mind is to draw your, you say, if I go to the doctor, I want the doctor to tell me I'm sick. Well, what happens if the doctor tries to say, you're sick, let me help you, and the person drawing out that allegory says, I'm not sick, don't tell me I'm sick, like, I know better and you're just being hateful.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
That's an excellent analogy.
Destroy yourself.
It's really harmful to not recognize your own sickness. We're all sin sick, aren't we? And we all need the medicine of the gospel, and the person has to say to themselves, I need that gospel medicine.
Yeah, people do have the right to refuse. That's been the case with people since the beginning, or shortly after the beginning. But anyway,
And why?
yeah, and it was their central nature that caused them to refuse and think. But we as humans tend to put sin at, a gradient. This is worse than that, this is worse than those two together, that kind of thing. With God, a sin is a sin is a sin. It doesn't matter what kind of sin you're saying.
You know, Luther said, love God and do as you please. And that really just always strikes you, doesn't it, when you hear that? Just wham, hits you in the side of the head. But let me ask you a question. What is it that God's looking for from you? What does he want from you?
Trust in God.
Does he want you to obey all his laws? Is that what he's looking for from you?
It's
He
impossible.
really wants your love.
He wants your love. Is that something that he can legislate?
No.
That's the one thing that God can't do. The one thing he's looking for from us is the one thing he can't force to happen. It has to come volitionally. It has to be from your heart. You have to want God.
That's love, free will.
It's free will. It's love. It's a free decision. Not the sense that you decide to love God, but you have to decide every day, don't you?
Yeah.
You have to decide, I'm going to serve God today. Or when you're faced with a sinful situation, maybe it's your one big nemesis sin, and you have to make a decision at every moment. Am I going to serve God, or am I going to serve my sinful self? And we'd all hate for anybody else to know how often we serve our sinful self, wouldn't we?
But you can,
But is God looking for that? Is he looking to see how many times you serve your sinful self as opposed to your serving God? I mean, has he got a big scale up there and a blindness and a sword pointing at the Bible like Lady Law? Is that how God does that? Is that what he's looking for?
He's not a taskmaster. He doesn't sit up and going, come on, just sin one time so I can bam, bam. No, that is not how God is. I used to have that vision of God.
That is exactly how I saw it.
I grew up in a very overly strict, legalistic Christian background. My mother was super legalistic. I won't go into all the details.
Good.
But I rebelled in my high school years. In my 20s, I rebelled and I did things I'm not proud of. And, God, out of his patience and love, kept blessing me. And I was like, why is God blessing me? And I'm doing all this evil stuff. I thought he'd hate me. And God finally showed me it is the kindness and mercy and grace that I bestow upon you that will lead you to repentance. Because I'm not like what your mother said I was. I'm a very loving father. I love you. I sent my son to die on the cross for you. I'm not up there with a whip going, come on, just miss up one time so I can whap, No, that's not how God is. He's not a child abuser. He is a loving Father.
Yes.
And I'm so grateful to God for that.
Wait, I think Jackie had her hand up first.
We need the law, and that's why it was given. Think of yourself driving in your car on the highway, down Fry Boulevard, wherever, and you're just tootling along, not thinking about speeding or anything else. Whoops, you see a police car. What's the first thing you do? You check the speedometer. Because you know.
First thing I do is hit my brakes.
Yeah,
Do it right.
because of course.
Let off of the gas.
See, so we need the law, so we
To
can
keep
that
order.
down.
Yes.
You said you wouldn't talk about it.
If I didn't have the law, I wouldn't know why I was yelling at the guy for doing what's wrong.
Well, maybe that's the third use of the law. The first is, it shows us God's will. Second of all, it shows us how sinful we are, the gospel. But the third, it shows us, it keeps order in society. I don't know. I could be
We'll
wrong.
talk about that third use of law another time.
I could be wrong, I'm just saying.
What my pastor should do if that's a law.
If this becomes a law, yeah.
Oh.
So, let's say this goes on. What would you recommend to your pastor or your church should do if this does become a law? It doesn't have to necessarily be homosexuality either. I mean, you could put another one. What if abortion or whatever? If you proclaim anything against abortion, you're a hater. If you
That's the answer in
Whatever.
itself. It's just like IT and hackers and stuff like that. People in the technological industry are always looking for safeguards to prevent the wrongdoers from infiltrating and doing stuff they're not supposed to do. As soon as you come up with a solution to this problem, what happens? Well, those guys start looking for a way to get around your protective measures. So then, once they do that, you have to come up with a new protection, and it keeps cycling. And it's the same thing if the government and I was wondering how dated this was, because I thought it already was a hate crime to preach against
Yeah, it is.
homosexuality.
In
But
some places.
let them put in anything they want. If all of a sudden it was now a law to preach against homosexuality, well, then the pastor can get up in the pulpit and start preaching against adultery. And then when they say it's against the law to preach against that, okay, then covetousness. This is what we'll do. You just keep moving around them, because there's more than enough sinful behavior around there. You'll be teaching until the cows come home.
Congress will never let you preach against covetousness. Bob.
Well, the other thing is Dr. Meyer told us how to handle this. When you have a situation like that where the government is telling the pastor what he can and cannot do, we as citizens and members of the Lutheran Church need to do what he told us, which is vote the suckers out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Make sure they're unemployed.
Sure.
And put people in there who will do the right thing instead of the wrong thing.
I agree with you. That's 100% correct. I think that's the point.
Pastor Gary,
Thank you for bringing us back to what they were saying
but
earlier.
if it came down to that, as they said, you can't preach against whatever, I would, in love, respectfully, generally say, I'm sorry I cannot do that in my good conscience, like Martin Luther, and like in Acts 5, like the apostles, I'm sorry, but I must obey God rather than man. You're telling me to sin, like the three Hebrew children, the three men, I'm sorry, they were told to bow down before the statue of King Nebuchadnezzar. And King said, look, if you don't kneel like everybody else, I'm going to throw you into that fire. And he said, I'm sorry, we must obey God rather than man. And of course, God protected them. And he was with the apostles. And I look at church history, I look at biblical history, and I think God blesses those who take that stand. He helps them. He gives them the grace and strength, because we can't stand up for the gospel on our own strength. The Holy Spirit has to empower us to do so.
Sure, and your Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, the guys you're talking about, in Babylon, they're a good example of civil disobedience, aren't they?
Yes, yes.
They're a great example, and they said, we want you to know, Nebuchadnezzar, that our God is able to deliver us from your fiery furnace.
That's right.
But even if he does not, we will not bow. That's civil disobedience, the recognition that we serve God first and foremost. I mean, they served King Nebuchadnezzar in his court. They served him, and they served him well.
Yes.
And I mean, King Nebuchadnezzar did not want to do this. He kind of got trapped by they had these treaties that the ancient Babylonians had. They were trapped. You could trap a king by his own words. And so the satraps had done that. And so then he got really upset because he had to do what he didn't want to do, but he had to follow his word, so he was caught in that trap. And those guys stood up for their God, opposed to what was the law of the land. Yeah.
I wonder too if there's a point that, just like the Pilgrims, maybe some people, I suppose, could say, leave. I'm looking for religious freedom, and I can't remember what book or verse it was in the Bible, but there is a commandment, I think, where it says, come out of her, my people.
Be separate.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that the Amish do, right? They go and they separate themselves from the society in general to be separate from them. That's the way they would interpret that idea of being separate and obeying God rather than men. So they don't serve in the armed forces, and they don't vote, and they don't participate in our insurance stuff, and none of that. I mean, they're all by themselves.
Pastor Gary, I had to leave the Episcopal Church because of their changes of redefining marriage and their pro-abortion stance and everything. It just got so ridiculous I couldn't stay anymore. So
I
had
think
to
there are a
come
lot of
out.
Christians in the Episcopal Church who are in your position.
Yes.
Who say to themselves, what happened to our church?
Yeah, exactly. It's sad.
I got ostracized by a congregation which I belong because it stands on abortion. The pastor had a bumper sticker on his car that said, keep abortion safe and legal. And
Nothing about Jesus, though.
no, and I got ostracized because of my stance on life and on another subject. In fact, I had somebody very viciously ask me, I suppose you don't think that women should have special rights either, do you? I said, you're right, I don't. We're all equal on God's side. And I was ostracized for it.
Yeah, of course. That's interesting. That's a very telling question, isn't it? I suppose you don't expect women should have special rights too. Rights are for everybody. Okay. One of the swords the government carries is the tax-exempt status that exists for churches. What should the church do if this status were threatened? If your church were to lose its tax-exempt status, because this has not only a corporate situation, but also personally, how would that affect your giving? Because right now, it's tax-exempt, but that tax exemption also applies to you. It applies to the church in corporate, and it applies to you individually, because then you could write that off on your taxes. But what if we lost our tax-exempt status, which we can argue that the IRS doesn't have the authority to take away your tax-exempt status, since it's right in the Constitution, the First Amendment to the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. They can't do anything about religion. They're going to leave it alone completely. So you can make that argument. But leaving that alone, that argument aside, what would you do? Let's say we got involved in a moral issue that is politicized, like homosexuality or the abortion debate or one of those, and the laws move in the direction that calls that hate crime, and then they take away our tax-exempt status because we refuse to obey them. How does that affect the church, and how does that affect the giving of the individuals in the church? How would it affect you?
I would increase my giving to the church. And because they have not yet required me to place on my tax form what religion I are, it don't matter, it's a standard deduction for church giving.
Yeah.
I could be giving to goodwill, or savings in the ball, whatever. So They don't know, so it would not affect my status at this time.
Well, what it do mean you just mark down as charitable gift.
Yeah. And, I mean, that's what I do, I take that standard deduction.
Well,
Go with it.
they're already way ahead of you, I promise you. If they make that a law, they'll have a box you gotta check to write in where you're gonna be.
So what I would do is I would increase my giving so the church maintain its current level of services.
So you would, what do you think would happen? Do you think a lot of people would stop giving?
I don't think so.
It would be, it's a powerful weapon that the government has to be able to wield. What do you think that our responsibility is?
I think there'd be enough people to have a real revolution with this stuff.
Well, I hope so. You know, it takes a long time to really pull a revolution out of a people.
And replace them with, I like to see something replaced right now.
Well, that's what Garfield said, right? You gotta vote them out. Vote them out.
You have a chance every 4 years.
Yeah, every 2 years, really.
2 to 4.
Every 2 years, you can get rid of some of the bad apples, anyway.
Unfortunately.
Well, we got a lot of people that have been in office for an awful long time.
They've been there forever.
Too long.
You know, I was gonna do this axing, we got 15 minutes, I wanna finish these slides, so I'm not gonna do the Bible verse. I'm gonna get right to the, I'm gonna get right to the point of the Bible verses, though. What would you be willing to risk or give up to be a follower of Jesus? I mean, if it came down to it, and you know, we can sense in our society, in our culture today, that there is a push against we call maybe conservative. I hate the word conservative and liberal because, you know, liberal is a perfectly good word. And it comes from the word liberty. And I hate when people take good words, apply it to something that I don't agree with, and then use that word, and now I can never use that word again. I would consider myself to be a classical liberal in the original sense of the word. I also would consider myself to be Catholic in the original sense of the word. I would also consider myself to be Orthodox, but I can't use the word Catholic or Orthodox or liberal anymore because they're all used by other people and they're not used the right way. But you can feel a sense of pushback on believing Christianity. It's not to be unexpected in this world, right?
That's true. Jesus said that in this
Better
world
expect
you'll
it.
be hated.
You're going to be hated. If they hated him, they're going to hate you. So, but right now there's more of a voice for it. You know, there's more of a pushback. So what happens? What do we do if we're at a place where we have to risk something? What would you be willing to give up to follow Christ? And I would remind every one of you that at some point when you either were confirmed or when you joined the church, you made the vow that you would give up everything rather than fall away from Christ the crucified. So, what would you be willing to give up? Really?
We just came out of a sermon. And I would give everything by the grace of God. Because
Is what he did.
looking for, you know, he was looking for that treasure for us.
Yeah.
So we'd like to say we would do what Jesus would do.
In Isaiah, God kept punishing his people that he loved dearly because they would not put their trust in him. And we have to put our trust in Christ and lose everything for Jesus.
Yeah. Well, you're going to lose everything, but you're going to gain so much.
That's right.
A little over 40 years ago, there was talk that the Labor Department was going to make it illegal to have any kind of Christian things at your workplace. And my thought at that point was...
I work at the church.
My thought, well, you weren't working in the church, but if you were working in secular, and my immediate thought was, well, I guess I need to go out and find the biggest cross. If it has it, I'm going to find the biggest cross I can have to wear around my neck, And I'm gonna make sure I have a very large Bible sitting on top of my desk.
I have a cross hanging in my office, and my boss is fine.
Yeah. You know, I don't think that those efforts have necessarily gotten through. You know, we had, I know I've told the story about the creche, the manger scene that we have on the courthouse steps in North Carolina, the town I was at before I came to Arizona. And we got challenged about that by a lawyer from the next county over. And boy, there was a backlash, and I wrote a nice letter for the paper too. And I said, well, I don't really see what's so offensive about the birth of a baby, the historical fact of the birth of a baby. She said, if we're going to have it, we should also have fictitious depictions of Christmas as well. You know, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and Santa Claus, and you know. And so what I said in the thing was, her name was Barbara Goldstein. So I said, well, you know, this is a historical depiction of the birth of the most important, influential person who ever walked the planet. It's the birth of a baby too. There's nothing that is offensive about this. I said, would she recommend that we do that with other historical depictions too? Like, for example, the Holocaust Museum. Should we put pictures of fairies, trolls, and gnomes up because we don't want to offend anybody in the Holocaust Museum? Those are historical depictions. And we really need to realize the history, and realize history for history's sake. If for no other reason, the birth of Jesus Christ is also a cultural divide for us. We have our calendar.
AD and BC.
AD and BC? BC and AD?
Yeah. Before Christ. In the year of our Lord.
And in the year of our Lord, I don't know the meaning. But also, our calendar that we use every day starts actually it centers, it begins with you can't figure anything out in the calendar until you know what day Easter is. So, same guy. Once Easter is established, and it's established by the first Sunday after the first full moon after the vernal equinox, once you know where Easter falls, that tells you where everything else in the entire calendar goes. The entire calendar is based around that guy. I mean, for crying out loud, this is a very cultural, important thing in our society. So,
Did she hear you?
I don't know. I put an article in the paper. There was no rebuttal or anything.
Probably because she couldn't.
Well, what do you guys think?
Oops, I can't.
Should the government ever step in to curb a religious effort of any kind? I know you're looking at what I have down there. I can't block it. I'm blocking it right here from me.
To curb it, no. To promote it, yes. The government should not step in to promote it, but they should also not step in to curb it.
What about when Sharia law, which your dad had mentioned, alongside local or federal law is adopted, like as in Paris?
Insanity.
If there's anything about Sharia law that is contrary to the laws of our land, they absolutely have the right to say no. That's not going to be fair.
So the government could step in and say, in this country, it's our law, not your law. Your law will not hold sway. You know, in many European countries, they've gone into areas and filled that area with Islamic people, and they've then cordoned it off and established Sharia law all over every major city in France. You can go into areas, they call them no-go zones. I mean, France is lost, really.
Well, in Michigan right now.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of them in Michigan. Are they doing that in Michigan too? They're trying to pull that same
Yeah,
thing.
people trying to preach on the street corners, and
The trouble is, you can't keep them in their enclaves. They want to spread out. If you go in, you'll probably wind up dead, but they're still free to come out.
So we do want the government to curb certain things that where religion bleeds over into society, and it's going to be harmful to the laws of the land.
Pastor Gary, under Sharia law, I think I should be correct about this. If a woman is unfortunately raped, it will take 4 male witnesses to say she was raped. Otherwise, they won't believe it. Under Sharia law, women are treated nothing like, they are treated like second-class citizens. And people like these progressives like, oh, we should just welcome all these people. And yeah, well, let's see if you have that same attitude when they take your young daughter and do that. Let's see if you still have that same, let's all be tolerant.
Isn't it odd that they scream from the rooftops for women's rights, but when it comes to supporting that, they want to be tolerant about some people that really don't want women to have any rights whatever.
And some of these, Muslim countries that have Sharia law, they will throw homosexuals off roofs.
Yeah.
And thank God for America, we don't do that here.
No, we don't.
And I don't want us to do that.
Because what's good and right and salutary about Western culture is Christianity.
Christianity, amen, that's right.
Allowing the Amish to accept themselves from the draft or from medical services. Is that someplace the government ought to step in?
No, they should have the right to.
They have exempted themselves also from things like Social Security because they take care of their own.
Sure.
They live off their own land.
So the government should not infringe upon those. We definitely are not going to let Sharia law come in here. We'll let the government say no to that religion. But when it comes to the Amish, we wouldn't say that because the Amish aren't trying to impose anything on us.
The Amish are more Christian than they are Islamic.
And they
well, they are. Yeah, they are. It's a Christian.
It's not
It's
like Lutherans, but it is a version of Christianity.
Yeah, it's a Christian denominational.
They're like monks. It's like a big monk society. They just mind their own business.
They got some crazy ideas, but it's basically Christianity.
But they still have that right, as long as they're being peaceful.
Certainly. We don't want the government to mess with them, for sure. We don't want the government to. I don't want the government to mess with the Islamics. That as long as they're in their mosque doing their thing, leave them alone.
Yeah.
Forcing Christian Science parents to comply with immunizations and blood transfusions for their children. Ooh, what about that?
Well, the law of the land has to be obeyed. As long as they're not taking the children or killing the children, the law of the land has to be obeyed somewhere. You have to draw a line. And I still think Amish can serve in the military doing passive things.
Yeah.
They can't, but they've exempted themselves.
Huh?
They object. They won't serve.
It's too bad. It's the law of the land. When they had the draft, it was the law of the land.
Okay.
Now they don't have to worry about it.
No, but even when they had the draft, they weren't being tagged by the government because of their religion. Their
Well,
religion,
it should have been. They should have been
their
tagged.
religion calls them to separate themselves, and so our government has said, if that's your religion, then prove it. Prove it's your religion. But if you can prove that's your religion, then they've honored that in the past. We've got two. Pastor, you haven't said anything all day, so we'll let you have the floor.
We've got 1 minute to go. I thought I better get in here. Interestingly enough, in Switzerland, everybody has to serve 1 year in the army.
I bet there's no Amish there.
If you don't, you serve 1 year in jail. In Germany, if you refuse to serve in the army, you serve 2 years public service, like working in a hospital, driving disabled people. Just thought I'd point that out.
Okay, that's it. Move on.
Kind of looking at the three of them in the discussion, going back to the Amish and the Christian Science parents are following God in their lives. With the Sharia law, it's wanting to impose their law on everybody else. Whereas with the Amish and the Christian Science parents, they're not saying, hey, everybody has to do this. They're saying, this is what we're doing. And we want to be able to have that right to do that because of our religious beliefs. Whereas with the Sharia law, it's, no, we want our stuff to overshadow yours.
Well, we say live and let live in America. If you want to do that, that's fine. But if you want to make us do what you want us to do, then we'll kill you to make sure we can do what we want to do, or throw you in jail or something. All right. But anyway, what is the Christian's individual responsibility in November?
Vote. Okay, next.
Vote. And write Congress. If you're upset with what they're doing, write it. And, you know, and when you walk into the, I tell people this all the time, and I'm not afraid to tell people this. When you walk into the voting booth, you are still the same Christian you were when you walked in and when you walk out. You walk in there and you vote based upon your faith. If you, what you believe is what you vote. I'm not going to tell you what that is, but you know what it is because God's written it on your heart. So you vote your faith. It's a Christian's obligation to vote for a pro-life candidate over a pro-choice candidate who is it a Christian's obligation to vote for a pro-life candidate over a pro-choice candidate who is much stronger in other areas? It's an important question to ask, you know, what's most important to me? We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But we got to understand something, in my opinion, if you take away that first one, who cares about the rest of the rights?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That's the Declaration of Independence.
Doesn't matter.
Life was first, life.
Life is the most important thing, so, in my opinion, I'd love to sit down and talk to somebody who's a Christian and votes for pro-choice candidates, because I just want to understand how that works. I don't get it.
Nancy Pelosi does. She is a Catholic. She proudly wears the ashes on her head every Ash Wednesday. She goes even to visit the Pope, and she still is pro-choice.
They have excommunicates them?
They didn't and Biden too.
Well, I mean, I would like to understand how you could be that divorced from your faith. I just don't get it.
Hey, Pastor?
Yes.
She paid her indulgences, don't worry.
She paid her indulgences. That's right. I did my penance.
How many Hail Marys was that?
200?
Well, gosh, if you do at least 10 for every aborted child, I don't know, that's quite a lot. We would never see her in Congress.
We keep her out of trouble, that's for sure.
Maybe that's why she's still there, so she can make the money.
I'm sure that's more than just that.
One abortion doctor turned from being an abortionist
Praise Jesus.
when he was aborting a child, and that child grasped his finger.
Whoa.
And that
That's
showed
wicked.
him that child was living. And from that point on, he turned. He left. He could not do it.
Ooh.
Yes.
Hey, Gary, in middle school, in junior high school, when I was in 6th, 7th, 8th grade, and early high school, believe it or not, I used to peacefully picket in front of abortion clinics with other Protestants and stuff, and I even got so old that I was one of those juvie. I went to juvie, and I did this.
They arrested you and brought you?
Well, I was blocking the abortion clinic door with other people, and they, peacefully, and then they just pick you up, and they give you like 5-10 minute warning to get up, but I didn't, and so I was in handcuffs. I was put behind a police car. I went to juvenile hall, and they said, "Why are you here for?" I go, "I was just trying to block an abortion clinic door," and they said, like, "I wish we had more people like you in here. You don't belong in here," but I say, "I'm a Christian. I have a Bible." They're like, "I wish we had more people like you here in Juvie."
Yeah.
I got to be a witness for Jesus.
Yeah, well, you have that in common with the apostles.
So,
don't you?
yeah, so I did that in my junior high school.
Good for you.
That was my room doing.
I know the Catholic Church next door to my former church, the younger of the two priests, on Pro-Life Sunday, or that week or whatever it was, he put up a bunch of the crosses on the front lawn of the church and put a pile of ashes, and then he put on clothes of sackcloth, and he sat right in the middle of the ashes, in sackcloth and ashes, in the middle of that graveyard of baby little tiny crosses, and as a protest. I thought, wow,
that's awesome.
It's awesome.
I like that.
I'm not going to do it, but it's neat that you are, right?
That's just.
But it got in the paper anyway. Which are more important in an election decision? Moral issues like abortion or practical governing issues? And that's where we really need to remember when we go to the voting booth, when we're Christians, that we go there as Christians and we vote our faith. And because the church is the thing that sways society. And it's not for the church to stand up as a group to do it, but it is for the individual Christians in this country to, regardless of your party affiliation, and there's more than just two, by the way.
Yeah.
It's you believers that sway the government. And if we vote our conscience correctly, if Nancy Pelosi and these other ones would vote their conscience, maybe we would have better effect.
Maybe they don't all have consciences.
Well,
Well, the Bible does talk
maybe the
about
Pope needs to refocus himself on what believers ought to be doing rather than telling other countries how to run their country.
The Bible says that some have seared consciences, like in 1 Timothy 4, chapter 1, it says, in the latter days, some will have like preaching doctrines of demons and their consciences will be seared. In other words, they won't care anymore. They become so hard that they just don't care anymore, and God has given them over.
Yeah.
And I pray I never end up like that.
Oh, no. God will keep you safe till the last day. Just keep your eye focused on Him.
Thank you, Pastor Gary. I needed to hear that. Thank you.
And I thought I'd end with a rebel flag.
All right.
We don't think of that as a rebel flag, but that's what that is. That's a rebel flag right there. So, enjoy.
Thank you, Pastor Gary. I'd like to say one last thing.
Oh.
Like Superman, he's my favorite superhero. I grew up with Christopher Reeve. I just want to say this. I'm here to fight for truth, justice, and the American way. I just have to say that.
I noticed that about your Facebook page. You got Superman on it.
Yeah, Christopher Reeve.
Next time, how we got the Bible.
Oh, I'm going to.
Okay, pass the word.
I got to tell my Alex.
You are dismissed.
Thank you, Pastor Gary. Oh,